Hello, everyone, and welcome to an EA interview conversation. Today, I am with Ari Moshe Wolfe, and we are going to be talking about all things Uranus. Just kidding. We're going to be talking a little bit with Ari today about his upcoming talk in the EA online conference on Uranus and the subconscious memories of the soul. We're also going to be just learning a little bit about Ari. For perspective, I'm in relationship with Ari and we have a family together. We started, doing this EA association, the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers, and we've taught together. But he is someone who, on a daily basis, I learn more and more about every single day. So no matter how much time, this is a special opportunity for all of us to really hear. I want to start with your early experiences with evolutionary astrology. And in particular, I'm so curious about how it has been for you to learn the teachings of Jeffrey Wolf Green, but in particular through the message board, through the EA online message board.
Cool question. This is exciting for me. My I want to tell this story where it doesn't feel like I'm sharing the thing that I've always shared.
Well, we want to know something new and
unexpected. And I want to hear something new too. Yeah. It's kind of how I go. What I can say is I've always been a seeker of truth, and that's what got me into astrology in the first place. This deep desire to know what's going on, and I had that intuitive sense astrology is real. I never had to question that. That's intuition, just known. I became very frustrated and disillusioned by most of the teachers and books or online sources that I found. And this was around like 2003, 2004, 2005. It felt too descriptive. And it was around that time that my dear friend Kai, whose name was Chris at the time, he was talking to me about astrology, and he was really into astrology, very wise, smart individual. And he asked me my rising sign. And I felt, what was the feeling? Disinterested. Because I didn't want to have another conversation where, oh, that means this, that means that, right? And so I have a Virgo rising, and I answered. Maybe he asked me my moon and my sun too. And I remember saying something to the likes of, yeah, but listen, like, I don't really feel that anyone understands what this actually means. I don't know if I'm really interested in this anymore, or I don't really want to talk about it. Underneath this, for me, by the way, was a lot of pain. I remember actually walking through the streets of Olympia, Washington, and having this like heartbreaking moment of realizing I'll never understand this. Coming to terms with that truth, that I'll never understand what astrology is, came alongside realizing no one else really understands it either. It's like no one really knows what they're talking about. It was disheartening. It didn't take me to the depth and the level of insight that I felt was true to what's really going on. The more I read astrology books, the more I felt it was taking me away from knowledge. I felt it was taking me away from actually understanding anything, if that makes any sense. And this is not to judge what I can appreciate now and even look back at all these different teachers that I think I can even hold a greater appreciation for now. I think at the core of my soul journey is an ongoing desire for direct insight, direct experience, and for the knowledge and the answers and the learning to not add more clutter, like more ideas or more things to work out. I actually want the knowledge, and I don't think I knew this then, but I want knowledge to almost like remove things.
Make more clear the truth.
Make more clear, simplify, and that's I feel that way about like dishes and getting more stuff. I heard this line, do more with less, and you'll have less to do.
Mm.
You know, understand one thing and integrate that deeply in all areas of your life, and you'll know a lot more than you think, and without needing to learn a lot. That's what I find. So I got rid of most of my books, passed them on, maybe all of it. I told that part of the story so many times that I'm like, oh, did I really I think I really did get rid of everything. And it was at that time, and that same friend introduced me to Adam Gainsbourg's book, Sacred Marriage Astrology. At that time, he renamed it since then, Soul Sign Astrology, and also to Jeffrey Wolfe Green's Pluto book. Adam studied the works of Jeffrey Wolfe Green. So both of them had a very strong soul orientation. And when I read the words in both of their books, there was something in my soul that recognized, and I don't know what the word is, when words come from an authority of knowledge, of direct experience, and we can recognize, and this is how I feel about A Course in Miracles, where the voice there, it draws my attention, it draws my respect, because I can feel inside that this is coming from a higher authority, a deeper knowledge, deeper understanding. So you're going to ask something?
Well, yeah, I can feel how that orientation towards truth, or wanting what you're learning to clarify truth and to make it more clear, as opposed to truth becoming more obscured by having a lot of knowledge, right? That's feels like. And I guess my underlying question in the beginning was like, how was it though for you to learn, because you never actually met Jeffrey Wolfe Green, and you came to these teachings, you know, there's a learning where you've been practicing EA in a community of people practicing EA through the message board, and like it's a very Mercury Neptune way of learning. It's always been fascinating to me about how that experience has been to practice and develop yourself as an astrologer in that way.
Right. Yeah, it never even occurred to me as anything other than what is. I think because EA quickly, well, I think it took, that was 2005. In terms of elimination, transiting Jupiter, right, was transiting over my Saturn in the second house in Scorpio. So even though there aren't intrinsically very intellectual archetypes in that particular transit, Scorpio second house Saturn, but there was a deep psychological clearing, like the clutter, Saturn and Scorpio in the second house. Obviously this has become my main source of income in life for now almost 2 decades or something crazy like that. So it was very much clearing the slate for what's essential. What are the foundational building stones of the structure that I'm building? Here's what I've come to realize, and I'm grateful to articulate this because I never have before. When it comes to the opportunity to be in relationship to real learning or direct knowledge, it doesn't matter the forms that it comes. Like I never met Jeff Green, but I've had many inner experiences and in dreams and whatever, you know, it's there's deep resonance with his soul. And then on the message board, okay, there's no body. Like I've never seen anyone's bodies. I just see a bunch of usernames. And this is the old message board before you stepped in and actually recreated the new forum. There was an school of evolutionary astrology.com, which is where you can find a lot of articles and books and lots of resources, and the archive to the message board, which I think it ran from 2008 or so up until like a year ago. Yeah. So that was however many years, 15 years, 14 years. And that message board was the second. There was something else before I came in like 1999, even for a few years that I don't know much about. That was just the path. And when the intention is clear, it really doesn't matter how it's engaged. I felt really sincere. I was definitely for many years the most active member on that message board as a student. And at some point, was given the opportunity to teach and do practice threads. For me, the message board was an opportunity to read the content, read the material, put forth sincere effort in practicing and getting direct feedback. And many of the EA teachers, many of whom are at this conference, supported me along the way, and I've also become colleagues over the years. I shared it when I was interviewing you. I found myself calling it the ashram that I studied in for a while, and I never really articulated it in that way, but that's what it is. Yeah. It was one of my homes, and I was enthusiastic for the opportunity to do practice. I mean, we would do simple practices, like let's say we're learning there was a time where we were learning Lucifer, that asteroid, and we were practicing Lucifer with its planetary nodes, and solid, like not just, here's the thing about knowledge being added to truth. We can't entertain contradictory philosophies at the same time. And that's why I've never felt a draw to explore beyond EA so much. And it's not so much that there's like even an inherent judgment about others, especially now. There's probably a growing curiosity about more things, you know, but it was the core perspective that we are a soul, and that we can look at the natal chart as a way to understand our program and intention as a soul evolving through the creation of this human experience. Like that bottom line, that perspective is enough for me. I never needed anything more than that from a cosmological point of view. That's that, and that resonates in my being. And then to say, okay, that feels right, that feels true for me. I want to know what it's like to look at life through that lens. I want to get better at being soul oriented. And I want to learn how to read the chart from that orientation. So the elimination of lots of other voices was helpful, because we can put any cosmological perspective on astrology that we want to. And each perspective is going to be helpful for us wherever we're at in our life, in different times, different stages. For me, I was needing to come into resonance with a perspective that was helpful and relevant to my path. And that's where I think where truth resonates, the deeper piece for me is, it's true for me, it works for me, right? That EA perspective is something that I can feel helps me in my own conscious evolution, resonate as truth inside of me. And I think other systems can also be like that for other people. You know, I want to be really clear about that. So being in the message board was just effortless, because all I wanted to do was just immerse myself, and it's like a Plutonian osmosis, you know. It's just, I wanted to, I have Scorpio in the 3rd house, I have Pluto sextile Mercury. My Mercury itself is incredibly aspected in general. It's in Sag, it's with Neptune. There is a desire to get to the bottom line and to spiritualize my knowledge and my information, and to really learn and understand knowledge in a way that's meaningful and helpful and useful to some sort of transcendent ultimate purpose. It's very Neptunian for me. Yeah.
That's a perfect segue into my next question, which is, I'm, curious for you, given how these teachings were received, the connection that you have to Sri Yukteswar, and what's most alive for you in that relationship of download or transmission, the receiving of information in that way.
Wow. I don't have much of a active and conscious, thoughtful relationship with Sri Yukteswar. I can feel his presence in more of in a peripheral background kind of way. Like he's more aware of me than I am of him. I've never made any efforts. It's never been a conscious thing. It's funny though, because I recently repurchased The Holy Science, which is a book that he wrote, because at this time I'm re-delving into the whole topic of the yugas, the cycles. And I'm really into the work of Walter Crittenden, who's also a disciple of Yogananda, who was, Yukteswar's student. And Walter Crittenden is really into the teachings of Sri Yukteswar about the precession of the equinox, and how Sri Yukteswar teaches that we're a part of a binary star system. It's one of those things where, again, it's like, I don't know, I can never make a belief out of these things, and I'm fine being wrong. But there are just certain things that land inside as, yeah, we're part of a binary star system. And I don't know why I know that or feel that I know that. And I wouldn't ever care to argue it either, because it's like, yeah, fine, maybe I'm wrong. But it's like one of those things that lands as true inside, like an ancient knowledge, perhaps, So there's a lot of amazing research that to me feels really solid, that scientifically validates what Sri Yukteswar wrote well over 100 years ago, before I even think before we knew Pluto was out there, about the binary star system, and how that's the cause of the precession of the equinox with our entire solar system moving through space. It explains why the precession is accelerating as we're coming to closer gravitational pull with this other sun. There are just certain things that are just like very enriching and engaging. So right now, Sri Yukteswar is a little bit more in my field. I'm more than in the past. A few days ago, I was actually beginning to read some parts of that book again, and I want to go deeper into it. I mean, most of it isn't science. Most of it is about comparing the sameness of all religions. That's what that book's about. So there's an interesting renewed draw to just kind of connect more with like what did Sri Yukteswar bring forward. And for those that don't know, Jeffrey Wolfe Green in the 70s received the Pluto paradigm from Sri Yukteswar. So we credit Sri Yukteswar as the source, the spiritual source of these teachings. That then Jeffrey Wolfe Green, he calls himself the errand boy, brought it forward.
Interesting. I'm always fascinated because in my experience, I learned so much from you, and you often go down rabbit holes unexpectedly that I would have never pursued or intentionally, but it's amazing.
My most exciting thing to think about right now, well, one of them is Barnard Star. Just keep it there. Barnard Star.
We'll hold the suspense for more to come on that. And when we were putting together the conference, right away it seemed like you knew or had a knowing. Maybe I'm maybe I'm wrong, but to teach on Uranus. And so I'm curious for you how the Uranus element of all of this is connected, and what you feel called to share about.
Sure.
That.
I think it was suggested to me, and I was more, okay, sure, I'll do it. I was thinking Vesta.
Oh yeah.
And there's talk about creating a series down the road in the Association for Teaching some Asteroid Goddesses. So more on that later.
One of the main threads that is on the current forum, our current message board, is on asteroid goddesses. And one of the other parallels to that is on Lilith, which is a topic that Jordan Smith is going to be teaching on with Helena Garcia. So it's like it's in the field for sure. The goddesses.
Definitely, there's deep interest in that. So I'm always enthusiastic to delve more deeply into Uranus. So I want to say two things. One, the opportunity to teach on it is an opportunity to learn it. That's how I approach it. That's my deepest commitment. I want to learn more about Uranus. I want to understand more about who we are and what this life is all about. So Uranus is what Jeffrey Wolfe Green associated with the Jungian term, the individuated unconscious. We don't remember our past. In a Mercury way, we remember particular details that we can name and we can identify. Mercury memory is very limited because it's selective. And so Uranus memory, which corresponds to all memories of this lifetime, prior lifetimes, that in-between place before we come into the world, everything that's contained within the field of the soul experience is embedded. I think it resonates also with the idea of just Akashic, that which is completely recorded. And it's even the individual destiny or unfolding of the soul, right? When you just like let things happen, there are certain things that are just sort of programmed from the non-time space position of source that's sort of projected as the intelligent design of creation. Uranus is what sort of correlates to things like tarot cards or the I Ching or astrology itself, where we can read all of life in purely archetypal terms, in purely impersonal, objective ways. I love that because to every deeply personal and subjective experience or perception that I hold is the actual Uranian dimension of reality, which is looking at the intelligent design of life unfolding. So with Uranus, we're always going to have our projections and our stories and what we put onto life, but we're predominantly unaware that contained within our soul memory are all these suppressed and subliminal memories That's a word that Jeff Green used, subliminal memories of the past. And Jeff Green taught that about 80% of our perceptions and our reactions to life experience comes from the past, which we pretty much don't remember. Where we're going to feel things and have impressions, but it's going to almost seem like non sequitur or irrelevant to the life that we're living now. So this talk is going to be about looking at Uranus from the point of view of the subliminal memories within the soul and how that influences the life and the experiences that we're perceiving. We're going to be addressing how we can look at the Uranus archetype, including its south node and its north node, planetary ruler of the position of Uranus, Aquarius, anything happening in the 11th house, the planetary ruler of the 11th house, in total to speak to the subliminal memories within the soul. So it excites me because this is like an amazing topic to delve more deeply into. In my own chart, I can think about this forever. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. Even if we just take one part of it, take the 11th house cusp, right? And the ruler of that 11th house. What does it mean to understand the memories and the imprints within the soul? And thus, what are we liberating from within that signature? Because to our perceptions and our reactions and the subjective story that we'll put on our experiences, we're bound by them. We're stuck in them. We're living in a matrix that we're projecting. So we can't see what is, and we can't even understand the blueprint. You know what I'm saying? The Uranus is the blueprint. So just delving more into it, rereading a lot of Jeff Green's teachings in the Uranus book. Whenever I teach a topic, I'll often go to the old message board, which I highly recommend, and just search some keywords. There's so much, and you'll find like Ari Moshe in 2009 asking a question, you know, like there's a wealth of information there. And oftentimes that'll bring up new questions and I'll, you know, formulate a new path of learning.
A couple of things that I'm reminded of the Uranus book, Jeffrey Wolf Green, Freedom from the Known. It's one of my favorite books. I think it's one of my oldest, like, little archival astrology pieces of literature. And I've always held that how powerful that is, the freedom from the known, which means to be free from what we have already known, what we've been conditioned to know. And it reminds me of the Course in Miracles. The very first lesson is nothing that I see means anything. And it's essentially pointing to what you're saying, which is that when I look at the room that I'm sitting in, the couch, the chair, the plant, the meaning that I ascribe without even any consciousness of it to those things comes from the past. That's the only place it can come from. And so we're rarely ever in the present moment looking at the conditions of our life from a present moment reality or from a freedom, from a place of freedom from the known. And to actually, I mean, it's fascinating to me, the idea to explore around what that means in terms of liberating ourselves from conditioning, what also it is to accept the non-linear reality of memory. Right? Because we think of memory as linear, as in like this moment and the moment behind us and the moment in front of us, but it's like reality doesn't actually exist in a linear fashion.
Exactly, or in time. It's
So
hard for us to comprehend that reality doesn't exist in time. Time is derivative, it's secondary to what's original. I always just, with Uranus, we can't think and understand or work with Uranus and operate within the same time space perceptions that's Saturn. So we can look at this idea of memories when it comes to Uranus and talk about the past, but where we're actually looking at our patterns and sort of core archetypal dynamics that are alive and present now. It threads. If you change the thing you're holding in your hand, then you'll see a new dimension of it, and you'll see, you know, if you look at it this way, it's flat. You turn it, and then you'll see 3 dimensions. You know, one of those things. It's hard for us to appreciate that because so what is known? Saturn. Really, we think about freedom from the known because we're so conditioned by Saturn. From the point of view of Uranus itself, like from a purely Uranian point of view, it's not freedom from the known, it's freedom. or it's what is.
Mm-hmm.
It's the actual intelligent design of creation. Really, the association of Uranus with freedom exists relative to Saturn. And like we have these agreements with each other because we gotta like pay taxes and make our kids food and get them ready and have a conversation and do all the things that humans do. So I'm gonna hold you in Saturn, you're gonna hold me in Saturn, because if you don't, we're not gonna get anything done. Like to be able to function and manage ourselves in a basic way.
But wait a second, wouldn't we then still experience just the unfolding of reality if we did not hold each other in those forms?
Well, I think the key is we have Saturn, and that's going to be relevant as long as we have purpose and that we're evolving within time and space. I think the issue is we get overly conditioned by it. Like, well, you are that role and I am that role and you are that role. And let's make sure we stay there because I'm afraid of the unknown. And the known is what we can control. The known is a parameter. It's defined. It's clear. We can predict it. We know what it was. We know what it is. And we know I'm going to be making a video on Uranus Venus square. Third this weekend is Venus Uranus, the final square. And what I'm going to say, this is a very Uranian thing. I've never met anyone who gets into a relationship and says, okay, I'm going to get into this relationship. For the first 6 years, I'm going to love it. It's going to be really good. At around 6 years, I'm going to get sick. It's going to really increase the finances. We're going to have a lot of financial stress. We're going to start feeling resentful toward each other. Things are going to change. My partner is going to end the relationship and find someone else. I'm going to feel lost for about 4 years. Then I'm going to learn this new healing modality and actually change my job, quit, and do something else. But no one thinks or plans for that. We don't make choices in life thinking, well, this is going to be here. It's that snafu, that unexpected thing, and this trauma, and then this clarity and resolution after that. But that's what happened because we're so conditioned by our past and the parts of ourselves that we've suppressed, our own individuality. So these shocks and these changes happen, and it's scary and it's difficult, and we don't have the bird's eye view, the objective sense to look at it, understand what's really unfolding, because we're trying to keep everything in a box. When we become more of an observer and we heal, it's like when we heal the past, or when we heal the pieces from the past that are still here now, that have always been here now, maybe suppressed, we start to see everything as it is. And that's the freedom of Uranus. That's that freedom from the suppression of this immensity of truth and what we are and what life actually is.
It's funny. Earlier today, I was on a panel talking about eclipses, which are often associated with Uranian type of unexpected events. And I was like, no one expects the unexpected. Right.
But no one expects no one expects the Inquisition.
The Inquisition. Yeah. That's from Monty Python.
There we go.
But it's true that what that disrupts, the disruption factor, or how Uranus is associated with crisis or trauma, is it impedes that element of Saturn conditioning where we actually, we expect people to behave in the way that they behaved in the past. Right. We expect, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but where you drive by an empty building all the time and you take your normal route every day. And then all of a sudden, one day you look at that building and it's not empty. It's actually become something totally new. And it's unexpected in that moment to realize, oh, there's a restaurant there. But we were unaware of the catalyst of change that was happening inside of that building, all the while we were passing by it in its sort of presumed state of consciousness, right? And we can think about this for ourselves. If anyone, you have trouble changing, I repeat the same pattern again and again. And I often come up against this where it's humbling and it's a source of like deep reflection of how do I actually change a pattern that I can't seem to keep, and then there is that element of Uranus, freedom from the known, where something comes in and changes the pattern. And I've had this happen with habits that I didn't want to have anymore, with ways of living that I was like done with, where it couldn't change when I was trying to change it or trying to even discipline myself into that change, but it had to change through something greater than me. And I think what you're speaking to around Uranus is that greater creator consciousness that sees all things outside of conditioning.
Right. And it's completely impersonal. That's what's hard for us to appreciate about the evolutionary journey. It's not taking sides. It doesn't care about preferences. It's really not interested in what we think we want. It's far more intelligent than that. It knows a lot better. It's a lot smarter than us. That touched something.
Yeah, I know you're gonna make me cry.
I don't. Touching she's an Aquarius, so yeah.
Fortunate for you.
What is it that I just said?
I don't know.
Okay.
What you said, if I could paraphrase it, is that there is an intelligence that's beyond us that is
knows more than us.
That is operating things. That goes beyond our conditioned.
Fortunate for all of us, truly that's when the earthquake happens and flowers come out from between the cracks in the concrete. Maybe it's great looking concrete, but it's the flowers there's the flower wanting to come through, it's just so helpful to recognize that we don't know anything. We just don't know enough.
A part of where my healing has been is in understanding, trauma in the natal chart. And this isn't necessarily an evolutionary astrology thing, though. I think what Jeffrey Wolfe Green was pointing to with the soul and its evolution is at the very root of how we actually heal all forms of trauma on this planet. And it's a part of why I feel so deeply committed to this work and this lineage. And from what I'm hearing you say, there's an element of Uranus where if there's crisis or if there's shock or if there's sudden change or upheaval, that is healing something greater or deeper. Do you believe that this is, the repetition of past life stuff, or that, what is coming up with these subconscious memories is happening for our present moment healing, regardless of whether, it related to a past life or not? What's your perspective?
Yes, but I love the perspective that it's all for our healing, and we don't always know that. Like the repetition, it's not even, if I think about it, it's not even the repetition of the past. It's the continuation of what we're carrying. And the past doesn't repeat itself when it's gone. Like when we're not taking it with us anymore, it serves no purpose. It's like you don't have to repeat 12th grade if you're done, if you've passed the curriculum, so to speak, So everything that's inside that is unmet does manifest as an event. And we can seem like the same things are happening, but mostly the case, maybe always the case, it is not the same thing happening, but it's eliciting the same exact reaction, and thus eliciting within the conditioned reality around us and the people the same exact response and reaction. Why do we resonate with the same relationships, experiences, events over and over and over again? It's like I traveled to a new country, or I'm in a new body, and the same exact thing is happening. There's no escaping what's inside of us. And I think healing is what begins to happen once, on whatever level, we begin to turn within to the inner environment, to the inner reality. But there's also this appreciation that we all endure the repetition for as much as we do. And who is to say that it's not implanting some level of self-awareness or perspective, right? The healing potential in those moments where we're triggered and that content is shaken up, those are the moments where we actually get to, and this is something Jeff Green often said, to realize this moment isn't the same as the past. They're not out to get me. I am safe right now. Contrary to the evidence, because there's always going to be evidence that will say it's one of those things that only we can individually explore personally, never say to someone else, like, be unsafe, look at it objectively. It's like, we can do this for ourselves to question our thoughts. Is it true that this is what's happening? Yes, the mind will find evidence for it because that's the nature of the mind. But is it true? What if we question that thought? It's amazing what else we might see if we question our certainty. And that certainty is just that replaying of the past. And that will keep us traumatized. It might keep us dissociated. It might suppress the content. And that's why in the healing process, if like I love craniosacral work, when I've gotten it done, I would always just like feel like my whole system is like unraveling on its own. Like the neck, everything will just sort of move in a certain direction. And it looks like it's getting out of alignment. But it's just, they call it unwinding. That's Uranian, almost like working back. Let it all move through, but stay as an observer. Don't interfere and contract. And because the moment we do that, we're actually putting it into a Saturn dimension. Fear and the need to hold on to the known to protect ourselves steps in, and it says, "This is what this event means. This is what's going on. This is what's happening." And that's also the Jupiter function, where then we're all, and Uranus there are no names, there's no interpretation. Jeff Green taught that Uranus is the higher mind, and we can say the signals come in from the higher mind, from the non-conditioned consciousness, and then the mind will classify it, give it a name through the left brain function, Mercury, and also give it meaning, be able to contextualize it, and understand its connectiveness to all things and understand its meaning, Jupiter. But prior to that classification, there's just pure witnessing. And when we witness, this is the threshold that I'm really curious about with Uranus. Oh, what happens on its own? That's the inquiry with Uranus. Like, what happens when we let it be? But letting it be isn't dissociation. Letting it be is also letting us be. Letting everything emerge. There has to be an allowing in that.
Yeah, it makes me think that Uranus is, in its unconditionality, related to the essence of unconditional love, but not in the way that we would think of it from a Neptunian perspective.
Right.
Like, not divine love, but in the way that the present moment is unconditional love.
That's beautiful. I mean, this is why all these planets are connected with each other inherently, because Neptune is what's fundamentally and always true. It's where we come from, which is the present moment, which is where eternity is. So like, it's not our typical thought about the present moment. It's like Neptune is everything. That's where it all is. And we can have moments of that. But this is where we can really appreciate understanding the evolutionary astrology teaching. Desire is the bottom line. What's our soul program? What's the content that we're working out? Like, what are the desires that we're working through in this life that brought us into this lifetime? What are the individual memories that are suppressed, that relate to experiences that we've had within this evolutionary journey? Like, that's why evolution is an elimination process. We arrive at Neptune. Like, that's the place that we can abide in. That's what's actually true. That's what's fundamentally always there. But we need to work through all of the layers and the constrictions and the veils. I think I've heard Jeffrey talk about Uranus like veils. When those veils are cleared, and we'll start to see everything. When Uranus vision begins to open up, and I have friends, it's not so much for me, friends that have really clear past life vision, that can be terrifying. right? When we begin to unravel the algorithm, and it's like the opportunity for fear almost gets even stronger. Or even just like when Kundalini energy begins flowing and our sort of life force is available again, that can also be terrifying or very ungrounding or very scary, because simultaneously all kinds of unresolved content or perceptions or memories will also be emerging at the same time. So it's easy to become very destabilized while this kind of Uranian experience is happening. But it's all cleansing the way for God. It's all just clearing the way for love, for truth to just abide within us.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it resonates with brief experiences that I've had of what I would consider being in a state of awakening, and having the complete experience of reality as different from the conditioned state of reality, and
incomparably different.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think some of those moments have also come within my life during times of great, seeming crisis, where it's healing to be able to be free, completely free of all conditioned states. But it also requires us, like, I've never learned how to maintain that as a state of constant, being. I think I would be somewhere else in my life if I did that. But yeah, I can see this. One of the things that came up for me when you were speaking was like, oh, then in that way, healing is somewhat controversial.
It is. That's sweet. Healing is controversial. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. It's very controversial. Actually, and if you think about it from the point of view of Saturn, when this content, Uranian content, is released, and like the suppression and the dissociation, like when the stuff begins moving, it's always in some way or another going to push up against the tidy boxes of Saturn, and that can really bring us face to face with our shame or our guilt or our fear. Our own. I love the idea that Uranus is everything is on the inside. The entire fractal reality also exists inside. All the friends, all the people, all the galaxies are all within. And so it's like the inner headline, like the news channel, our inner group of friends, our inner family members, our inner parents, our inner social media are all going to be talking about us. But these are just parts of our own being that's liberating. And we can really appreciate that we're liberating together when we see that the reactivity or the headlines that we're making in social media are also inside. And we can see that if we don't interrupt it or try to control it, we allow the outside and the inside to come together. It's a gift that we give to each other to really stay in that togetherness space of recognizing that it's always together. It's one of the hardest pieces with Uranus, because especially as our differentness emerges, it can become very easy to focus on, they don't get me, or I'm different than them. Well, no, there are actually also elements inside of you that are judging you, but that's you. May we really learn that. I'm sharing these words, it's beautiful, and I appreciate that. And I think it's just also humbling to recognize that for myself and for most of us, we're so conditioned by the belief in the absoluteness of the outer world, that it really takes some practice and devotion and real thoughtfulness. And I think community and Sangha relationship is always such a blessing. That's Uranus too, like having others of like mind that share in a similar understanding. Coming back full circle, this is why the opportunity to teach this work and to study and to reconnect with it, it's really healing, because there's power in thoughts that are shared. There's power in thought. And if thoughts are shared with respect to truth and healing and to unity, that gives those thoughts more power. So it's like a really wonderful thing that we get to do.
It's interesting. That reminds me of an experience I had yesterday when we were at the synagogue, and the rabbi was offering the priestly blessing for the tribes of Judah. And part of what came up for me in that moment of Uranus and Sag, is this feeling of like, I don't know what tribe I belong to, but there's a sense and knowing inside of me that I did belong to a tribe. I could almost feel this internal, why am I not, like, I couldn't with total clarity go and stand under the Levite, tribe, but
we should find out.
I should, right?
Yeah.
And there's an ancient sort of memory inside of me whenever I'm listening to the rabbi, or like, and I know that it corresponds ancestrally. I am the great granddaughter of a rabbi. I was, my great grandfather was a Zionist. There was a deep calling to Israel, so I know that, even though I have never had anyone tell me that or give me that, like, it's just inside of me. And when I was watching the blessing, I was just having this profound experience of also feeling the outsiderness of not knowing, not being able to claim in this lifetime the awareness of where I belonged. Right. And anyway.
And can I say where your Uranus is?
Sure.
In the fourth.
Yeah.
In the fourth.
Yeah. So
Sag in the fourth, right?
Yeah.
So that's
feel
touching
different
upon,
from somewhere else, but I don't know where I'm from.
Right.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. That experience of, I'm from somewhere else, but I can't quite say where. It's Uranus. And to find belonging there is hard if we're trying to find something measurable, right? But the real belonging is in the soul, is in resonance. But it's also this interesting thing where people often ask, are our past lives also reflected in family genealogy, right? Literally no, in the sense that, like, in my understanding, we don't reincarnate into necessarily and usually the same family lines. Like, it can be very different from one life to another. Sometimes not, but sometimes yes, but mostly not. But I also have that sense that we can find the core ancestral themes in our chart, the core themes in our chart, in our ancestry. It's because of that fractal reality. It's like wherever you look, we're going to find those themes. And I find that to be very interesting. A movie that we really enjoyed, a Netflix series, was Another Self, which was it was a Turkish series. It's very Iranian, and these people that do these, they heal their trauma by doing this like group therapy work, where one person will like stand in the middle and another person will be like a prop, and they'll like kind of channel these unhealed ancestry pieces that will perfectly correlate to the traumas that they're still working on. Like, my great grandmother was killed while immigrating from this country and pushed off a boat, and and it speaks to, we'll meet these people, like, whether it's wherever we look for this healing, wherever we look, we're going to find these fractals of these core pieces that are inside of us, because the algorithm doesn't betray itself, So there's always this brilliance that unravels, that in the threshold of not belonging, the other side of that is this brilliance of interconnectedness and community and belonging that is incomprehensible to anything that we've known. It's kind of like the black sheep trying to be a part of the group of sheep, and all the other sheep are white, and it's like all I can think about is the sheep that I'm different from. And you just unravel and unravel and unravel, and you realize, oh, there's a lot of sheep out there. There are also goats. There's a community of goats where all those goats are different colors. And I once met a llama that was pink, and I've never met a pink llama before. It's like all these possibilities, and like suddenly, like one day you're traveling and you get picked up by a bunch of elephants, and you get to this community where like there's not one color that repeats itself. And the thought that community and belonging is greater and vaster than anything we ever could have possibly known. To contemplate for every Uranus signature, or what's on your 11th house, or whatever's happening with Aquarius, like belonging and insiderness is more intrinsic than we understand. And that's the issue. It's more intrinsic than we understand.
Well, in general, there is I think, a mistaken perception that the black sheep is like lost in a sea of white sheeps where it doesn't know itself other than being different. But it's very likely that that black sheep was born from a white sheep. Right. And that's where often we're born into a family where it's like we are the evolutionary next step for our family. We are the one who,
Beautiful.
in our outsiderness, in our differentness, break the habitual pattern in the family that allows for an interruption. And it's almost because of our outsiderness that we create the field of possibilities for something different, but we're from that family because evolution desired itself to be evolved. And I really get that, like, every generation on some level is going to have an element of black sheeps being born for the required change that would bring about the healing of an entire flock of white sheeps and goats and llamas and all the,
And that's where, at a certain stage of healing, many people might feel like, I need to find a black sheep community. And then the black sheep becomes a safe refuge. There's healing in that, but in its own way, it becomes its own white sheep. It becomes its own new, maybe a more accepting and safe and inviting community for people to be different than the mainstream, but it becomes its own structure, reality. And so there's always that edge where Uranus is going to be pushing the known parameters of Saturn to elevate the Saturn, and then Saturn is going to like integrate more of what was otherwise purely Uranian. It's like it elevates the stat. That's how evolution happens. I mean, you can think of it from the spiritual stages of consciousness. It moves through, and things that are individuated and different eventually become integrated within consensus reality and elevates the consensus.
Right.
But then there's a need to continue to individuate, in a sense. We have to keep on. That's the thing with Uranus. It's an ongoing liberation from the known.
Yeah. I often hear Jeffrey Wolfe Green referring to this in his teachings, especially in the Pluto 2 book, where he's talking about aspects and phases, because there's so much of particular phases that require the casting off of the known in order for us. It's like he talks about the opposition as the evolutionary bridge, and where we have to, find our way, or the square as the crisis of consciousness, right? Those are all elements of Uranus where we are having to rebel against what's familiar or known in order to liberate, but it's just for a time, right? And then I think there is a circling back where we can become reintegrated into the whole, into the collective, as fully who we are, accepting the truth of who we are. And maybe that's when the point in families where we're able to come back together with our family and not be as triggered, or not, sort of revert to a younger aspect of self, but really, like, I know this for myself in my own relationships, in particular with my father, like there's such deep desire at some point in my life to be able to come back together with him as myself without any part of myself suppressed. But at this point, I'm like I spend most of my time hanging out with the black sheep and, doing the things, and often deeply wondering about what it would take in order for my liberation to include him, as opposed to be away from him.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. Can I share a thought that arises?
Sure.
I think when it comes to that question in general, one of the teachings is just meeting that point where these are characters on the inside, and being able to almost like love and include and invite even the judgmental, harsh, non-accepting parent figure, or it's like, and this isn't advice, I think we all have this inside of us, where it's very easy to get stuck in the Saturn, like, here's a conditioned reality and I'm gonna not belong here or be judged here. but that Uranian reality, which is these are all, and the truth of that is so profound. It's like we've recently, I feel, just been developing friendship. Oh, we have a talk with Kristen Fontana now, so we should probably end this interview.
It's been a great interview.
Maybe I'll complete this thought. Like,
yeah,
vibe attracts your tribe,
right?
right? You know, so these are things that we hear, but we get so focused on the external, like where's my people, or how do I feel myself around this person? We always forget that it's our inner environment that's the real thing that we're working on. Like all the cool people we want to meet, they're inside already. Like they're you. Like, you know, it's always about reconciling with what's inside of us. And I think that's the teaching for us on this journey. Okay, so we'll end it here.
Thank you, my friends. You can join us for the EA online conference. We're going to be hosting it completely on the web, and it's October 6th through the 8th. But even if you can't join the live conference, everyone who registers to the conference gets full access to all the recordings. There's amazing talks, 15 different astrologers coming together over the course of 3 days. And Ari is one of our amazing speakers, and we would be delighted if you join us in this Uranian community of evolutionary astrologer students, really tuning into the core teachings of Jeffrey Wolfe Green. And all the information that you need to find on how to register is at jwgaea.org. So thanks so much for listening to our interview. And if you love something, if you were touched by something, please leave it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. All right, my friends, take good care. Bye for now.